Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on wherever you're joining us from. Thank you very much for joining us for this live broadcast. My name is Sanjay Jagad. I'm the Senior Director of Product Management and Solutions at Cloudian. Today, we will be talking about the IT requirements and use cases in the federal public sector space, right? Specifically around data and storage management. And to help us with that discussions, we have two industry veterans who have worked in this space for a long time to come and talk to us about what trends are they seeing, where do they see the market heading, and it's going to be a fun chat. I'm really sure that you're going to enjoy this. So let me just get started. First, I would like to introduce Dave Muirhead. Dave is the public sector special accounts manager at our reseller ClearShark. Dave, nice to have you. And I would like to first congratulate ClearShark on being named the Public Sector Partner of the Year for two of our top alliances, Splunk and Nutanix. That's amazing. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. I'm really happy to be here. And thank you for the accolades. It's an honor to have great partners and to be recognized for superior delivery of those technologies into the space. So as you said, I'm the account manager for special programs here, which means that, for the last 6 years at ClearShark, I've been supporting the national defense sector of the U.S. government. But I've been working with federal accounts for 20 years now. I started out supporting DoD elements, both tactical and fixed, back at the beginning of my career, focused in the EMEA region. I then started supporting civilian agencies, and from there transitioned into national defense. So the last 6 years I've been with ClearShark. Love this company. We pride ourselves on being really heavy in engineering talent. The ratios of account managers to engineers is, probably 7 engineers for every account manager, which means we spend a lot of time vetting technology partners, and we spend a lot of time training ourselves so that we can fully appreciate the technology and fully insinuate it into our customer spaces. So similarly, did a lot of vetting with Cloudian, and we're really, really pleased to have this partnership. And I appreciate the time to join you this morning.
You're more than welcome, and it's been fantastic. Your team has been great. It's been phenomenal to work with. Now let's bring in next person. Next I would like to introduce Paul Thuman. Paul is a federal sales manager for Cloudian and has been doing this for many, many years, right, Paul? We have worked together for a long period of time. Welcome, Paul.
I'll just look at the gray hair, and you can see how long I've been in the marketplace. So I've been in federal for quite some time. I've been with Cloudian now for 3 years, and prior to that with Brocade for 20 years and a couple other companies before that. What's interesting to me is just to see the evolution of storage over that period of time. I remember quite a long time ago when it was really just direct attached SCSI storage, and then moving to storage area networks, and then moving to network attached storage. And now the next evolution really is object storage. And so it's just a really, really exciting time to be with Cloudian.
Absolutely. No, it's been fantastic. And I think both of you have done this for quite some time, right? And I think within you both, I think you guys can capture the industry. So let's get started, right? Now, I want to start off by talking about the federal market and how, Paul, you mentioned how the evolution has happened. So let's talk about how the market has evolved, specifically around storage and data management. Dave, can you help us capture what are some of the requirements or maybe challenges that you're seeing out there with your customers, whether it's because of the legacy solutions or what their needs are in terms of how to manage that data, right? What are some of the use cases are you seeing for object storage in public sector?
Sure. Something just to level set is to share with viewers that the U.S. government, public sector entities are very similar to the way commercial companies operate. The main difference is they're not building towards a profit baseline, but rather they are trying to build efficiencies into their overall networks to better provide services, whether those are healthcare or science, engineering, energy regulation or national defense. The bottom line is, improving the quality of life of U.S. citizens in the case of our government. And so as we see trends in the commercial space, like digital transformation is one of the popular buzzwords these days, it is prolific and the same in the federal sector. So digital transformation means allowing the workforce to work from home, in an atmosphere like we've got right now with COVID-19. Many, public sector employees need the flexibility to work from home, work from remote locations, right? And so this means adapting the infrastructure that underpins all of those federal agencies and how they, allow their employees to communicate. As commercial providers of SaaS technologies are evolving, you got Microsoft moving with O365. This causes, monumental shifts in the way federal agencies architect their data center technologies. Hybrid cloud, the advent of cloud computing. So in this 20 years that, Paul and I have talked about in federal, the trajectory over the last 10 years has been, virtual servers to virtual desktops to private clouds to now, the advent of public cloud services. And so in all of these things, what underpins the ability to transform how all of these federal employees work and how they provide services is that you have to have an agile framework, right? And so object storage is a critical enabler for that, whether we're talking about, where am I going to host my application, or where are my employees' desktops going to be? When you have an open framework, an S3 framework with object storage, you can be agile with where that data is. And it almost doesn't matter where your employees are, the service is going to be delivered. And then there are a litany of other really interesting use cases driving the need for object storage. Like in the public sector, federal agencies develop a lot of training content. They develop marketing content. They need to get the word out. They use VTC technology to collaborate, right? And so this has created an explosive growth in the amount of data that is, both traversing those federal networks, but also data that's being stored, right? And there's no more efficient methodology for storing all that content, being able to rapidly query metadata tagged to, video objects or, live stream objects than object storage. And so federal agencies are getting on board. They need it for security applications, for drone videos in the military context, all sorts of things. So we're seeing a lot of it.
Now it's phenomenal, right? The industry is evolved so much, and the amount of data that is growing, object storage just fits in, and it brings in, like you said, like the agility, the scalability, and the cloud connectivity. Paul, what do you see on your side, right? You've been at Cloudian, so you see specifically a lot more on the object side. Can you elaborate on what you see out there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sanjay. So we talk about this explosion of data growth, and I like to say that federal is probably the greatest manufacturer of unstructured data in the world. And when we're talking about unstructured data, we're obviously talking about video files, audio files, images. We're talking about log data, and anything that's just not feeding a database or some transactional type system. All those data types are very appropriate for object storage, and primarily because of its low cost. Where at scale we can compete very effectively with tape, and so organizations now are moving off of tape and creating these active archives. Mm-hmm. And we all know how cumbersome it is to retrieve data from tape and to do any type of meaningful analytics. That just about every major backup vendor is now compatible with S3 object storage, with S3 being the de facto standard defined by AWS for object storage. And so all of them, Rubrik, Veeam, Veritas, Commvault, you name it, they've all re-architected their applications to be compatible with S3. And within the application, instead of writing to tape, you just pick S3, and now you're getting the capability to write it to a very low cost architecture. And so typically that's really where we find our way into an account is through backup. And then eventually or invariably we'll have that conversation and our customers will say, that's pretty cool. I like the performance. It's actually pretty surprising to me. What other use cases are you getting involved with that we might be able to take advantage of? And so now we start to present ourselves as a archiving data lake where we can support multiple use cases. And so we may start out with backup, but maybe we expand to file sync and share, which would be an on-prem type Dropbox or OneDrive, with security and supportability within all the different platforms. That's a good use case. We're going to talk about Splunk in a second. That's a great use case for the logging data to store that on object storage. Tagging of files, that's a very advanced feature. That's really where the future of object storage is going, to where files or objects can be tagged, and those tags are actually stored in the metadata header, leveraging industry source tools like Elastic to scan those headers and create an up-to-date tagging database that is searchable via Kibana and with Google like search parameters. So NASA offload is another one. That's another good use case where you're taking dead files on NAS systems that have been sitting there for 6 to 9 months, and by policy, they'll move to a lower cost tier like Cloudian. End user and applications don't know that it's on us. They just operate as normal. Looking for files, and they don't really care if it's on a NAS system or Cloudian object storage. The file is delivered as normal. So these are some very good examples of how to leverage object storage. And really what makes it so powerful is just that S3 API that AWS developed. And so more and more applications are re-architecting their capabilities to take advantage of fast storage when they need it, and then leverage the low-cost object storage for when the data becomes less useful and less active.
I think you both brought up some very interesting points. And to me, I think that if I were to draw a common line between them, it's like, yes, the amount of data is growing, right? And you need a scalable platform that has the ability to scale and be able to host multiple workloads while doing that. And like Paul, you mentioned, the S3 compatibility is very, very important, right? There are many object storage out there, but what Cloudian brings is the compatibility with S3 API so that you have a wide ecosystem, not only just backup, but other applications that can take advantage of it. Because if your compatibility is not there, your applications are going to get locked in, and so on and so forth, right? So a scalable platform, S3 native, and be able to offer security multi-tenancy is probably the key. And this is where Cloudian succeeds. So it's been fantastic to hear that we are doing really good. Talking about, you mentioned a few things about Splunk, right? And I want to take that cue and when you deal with so much data, and we have seen this, right? We have worked with many customers when there is so much data and you're trying to find that nuggets of information. Like, Splunk is a phenomenal solution, Dave. And I think we talked at the start of this. You guys are the premier partner for Splunk, right? And what can you share us why Splunk is so popular and how Cloudian helps drive better TCO for Splunk customers?
Yeah, definitely. Splunk is a very important part of our portfolio, and we're proud to be their public sector #1 partner. The reason it's so prolific is that you think about all these networks and all these devices out there, IoT, all the network, services, routers, switches, firewalls, load balancers, the list goes on and on. Everything emits digital exhaust, right? And that digital exhaust can provide really interesting insights. We term data-driven insights, right? And you can apply that to network performance using something like Splunk, where you're aggregating all of the log data that's being, put out by all these devices, and with some machine learning inherent in their platform, start to predictively mitigate network outages, right? You can start to leverage automation so that when you see, performance degradation in a certain area or increased demands on certain application services, you can automate provisioning more capability. So it's a very robust platform. And this doesn't even speak of, what we find to be probably the bigger driver, which is approving security audits and, baselining security for cyber threats across all these federal agencies. So something that's really great about how Cloudian has embraced that AWS S3 interface is that Splunk also developed a new technology called Smart Store, whereby you can start to send warm data over via S3 and have access to it. And what this means is you then are able to disaggregate compute and storage. The way Splunk works is that you have to build out on a lot of compute so that you are ingesting data and searching it and analyzing it. And so this has a relatively high burden for the amount of compute you need. And traditionally, it would be built on white box servers, right? You would just throw 1,000 server nodes, and that's how you would build out Splunk. Well, now we can disaggregate compute and storage, and we can leverage S3 to do long-term warm buckets of log data that is searchable by your indexing tier. And so this lowers your total cost of entry when you're deploying Splunk, and you can start small or grow large. But inherent to any analytic is the fact that the more data you have, the more historical references you have, the better your data-driven insights will be. Whether that's forensically referenceable information about, a cybersecurity threat, or whether it's information about behavioral patterns for your network, right? When is it that we see boot storms? When is it that we see people logging in? How do we need to adapt our network to address these things? So Splunk makes it easy out of the box to gain those insights. And in integrating Smart Store and allowing us to bolt on Cloudian to have a lower cost of entry for that massive data storage and the creation of data lakes is huge. And we've already seen this within our customer base, where we are now implementing a lot of virtualized Splunk on hyperconverged infrastructure with Cloudian as the crucial add-on for that long-term storage and servicing warm data back into the analytic tier.
That's huge. Paul, and do you see the same thing on your side? I personally think Flash adds, with Cloudian just announcing Flash-based object storage, adds another element right now for these Splunk queries.
Yep, sure does. And so as Dave mentioned, in a Splunk environment, the first 24 to 48 hours is actionable data where system administrators can do something with it, with that data. And so that belongs on a very fast tier, as Dave mentioned, some type of a hyper-converged tier. But as the data starts to warm off, we can move it to S3. And Splunk has re-architected their application to speak S3, and as Dave mentioned, that's their Smart Store capability. And so we just announced this low-cost, all-flash object storage platform, and that gives us, I guess, an alternate way of managing this warm data. And so warm data can now go to this all-flash platform that gives a higher level of performance. And then based on policy, as it starts to cool off and get into the cold data designation, can automatically tier to an even lower cost spinning drive platform. And so that gives us more alternatives in a Splunk environment now, depending on what the performance needs are for the particular end user. You could go from hyperconverged to our flash and then to spinning, or you can go from hyperconverged just directly to spinning disk if that's suitable for the customer. It's all a price performance, all TCO kind of folds right into those decisions.
Absolutely. TCO is a big factor where our customers go for object storage because of the economics and the scale, right? And with our ability now to do flash and combine flash with spinning drive to bring in the value of performance as well as the overall price points for the capacity, we bring in the total flexibility that our customers can get the most value out of it. Dave, I think one of the other things that you mentioned was the more the amount of data, the greater the insights. But that's true, right? The amount of data that people have is amazing, but that with data comes security concerns, right? And especially for your segment in the public sector as well as in other places, security has in this current environment has become the foremost requirement, right? Be it encryption or protection against ransomware. Can you talk a little bit about how Cloudian helps address some of the security requirements for your customers?
Yeah, well, there are some really critically important table stakes for doing business with the federal government. And these are FIPS and common criteria certifications. So essentially, an appliance that's going to go in that data center has been hardened to a specific set of requirements. And so that has been an amazing part of the Cloudian offer in overall adoption across the DoD markets, certainly. Role-based access and the ability to differentiate who is allowed what accesses to what data is also critically important, and all of that has to be auditable as well. So as you are defining roles and accesses, defining policies, all of that stuff has to be auditable. And the fact that Cloudian has these capabilities, these certifications out of the box is a big win, and really making it easy for government customers to say, yes, that's what we need.
Absolutely. And certifications are a key in terms of managing and assuring the customers about the quality and security that we offer. And I want to just highlight out here that Cloudian, if you look at it from what we do, we are by far the only object storage solution that has the most robust certifications from an industry perspective, whether it's FIPS, common criteria, whether our ability to do worm storage through our object lock APIs and get the certifications for immutability, and also not only that, right? The challenge is most of the time the software-defined solutions have is that they operate in the user space. That means they need to think about how are they going to lock down the physical aspects of the systems on which they are being run. So Cloudian has the ability to not only just offer the certifications, but also has the ability to make that box tamper-proof by blocking out unwanted access. This is what our federal governments love about Cloudian. Paul, I just want to change the topic a little bit, and maybe I can ask you, right? It's always sensitive when we talk about specific customers, and we can't name the customers because of all the different reasons. But can you please talk to us, how our customers are using Cloudian and why they decided to go with Cloudian?
Sure. So let me just talk about a couple of the key features that we offer, and then I'll talk about some of the use cases that leverage some of those features. So Sanjay, you talked about the native implementation with S3. I can say that in most cases, that's a big reason why our customers are going with us. They understand that the S3 API is a very extensive, very sophisticated protocol, and not all vendors support, other than reads and writes or gets and puts in our language. It's very sophisticated, and most applications just implement a part of that S3 API. And so the consumer, doesn't really know what they are implementing out of it. And many times they go to run the application and it may come back with an error. Our native implementation of the S3 API allows us to be the most compatible implementation, industry-wide. And we can guarantee the compatibility, whether it's a COTS application or a custom application. So that's one of the big reasons. Another reason is that you can start small and grow very large just by adding nodes. Worldwide clusters with multiple data centers. You can start as low as tens of terabytes and grow to hundreds of petabytes and even exabyte scale. It's got a global namespace, so it doesn't matter where objects are stored. Wherever the application or the end user is driving a request, and worldwide, the request, our architecture will actually find that object and deliver it on demand. So that's another one. You look at our ISVs like Splunk and all the applications have been re-architected to support S3. We work with them. We certify our platform with those ISVs, and then we go to the market together to actually to leverage them. So, in terms of use cases, I can talk about a couple without naming names. So a large healthcare organization, they were doing some backups with Commvault, and we had that conversation. They said we were saving 50% over 5 years over comparable NAS systems. And so the CTO got a hold of those figures and said, holy cow, that's a lot of savings. And they re-architected their custom application to speak both NFS and S3. And that has grown into one of our largest implementations. And now they're having web type access for all their unstructured data. So that was a big win for us. We had another healthcare customer that, because of the low cost of object storage in general, they had like 17 petabytes on tape. They're now rehydrating all those files off of tape and putting it into an active archive. So now the end users, instead of requesting some files hit or miss via tape, they can now find it a lot easier with on object storage. Initially, that'll be file name, descriptive file names, and file folders for what's been restored from tape. But going forward, they create a very simple S3 application. So now the end users, when they go to save the file, it'll pop up a form, and they can put in even more descriptive data to make the searching more granular. We've also been chosen as the object storage vendor of choice for MilCloud, which is a private cloud for DoD. So it's operating behind DISA firewalls in 2 of their data centers. It's a pretty robust private cloud offering, but they went through a competitive type analysis, and Cloudian came on top. And so that was a big win for us in MilCloud. Another interesting one is DoD. I mentioned this earlier about tagging. There's some DoD locations that are actually looking at flight test data, and they'll take it off the plane the jet when it lands. They'll upload it to a NAS system, and it could be upwards of 1 terabyte. In capacity, and they may have up to 25 locations that are downloading the entire 1 terabyte file. Not a real effective use of bandwidth. The extension of S3 allows for what we call a ranged read, where you can send a part of that file instead of the entire file. And so what this DoD entity is doing an initial tagging, and using ML, machine learning, and AI to actually bypass the static data, like cloud data that's not really that useful. And when something changes, that'll mark the beginning of that sequence, it'll mark the end of that sequence, and then pop up a form for the analyst to put in more descriptive data about that sequence. So the analyst will actually tag the entire file and then make that tagging database searchable by those 25 locations. And when a remote analyst finds a sequence that they like, they click on the link, it will download that sequence, and saving tons of bandwidth. So we have a lot of backup customers out there. Like I said, that's typically the use case that we get involved with, and then they start to grow into more applications, more use cases.
Now it's phenomenal to see all those different use cases. Dave, I would like to briefly even extend the same question to you. Like, how do you see what makes Cloudian an easy storage choice for your customers?
Yeah, well, First and foremost, I think what I found in my interactions with Paul and his team is integrity. A lot of the customers that we work with, we can't talk about who they are and what they're doing, and we need partners we can trust. And I've found that to a great extent in my interactions with Cloudian, and the customers appreciate that. We found a company with flexibility in terms of roadmap, right? As customer demands change over time, as customers start to differentiate the way they're delivering services, like containerization, right? Containerized workloads, and the roadmap that Cloudian has ahead of them means that you guys will be able to take steps forward and support customers as they evolve the way they are delivering services. The fundamentals of the offering. Fundamentally, having embraced that S3 standard is huge, because it allows you to integrate into their environments and allows them flexibility, right? As they start to embrace external cloud service providers, the fact that Cloudian can peer via S3 with Amazon Web Services is huge, because it means flexibility for our customer. And ultimately, it provides them choice, and it drives the economic discussion down, right? They need to decrease cost and deliver more services, in the same way that every commercial entity is trying to decrease their costs and increase profitability, right? The net effect for federal, though, is being better at delivering the service that their agency is set up to deliver. The security baseline that exists within Cloudian is huge, that the customers can trust the role-based access capabilities, that they can trust the encryption, security, those standards that Paul talked about. Those are major, major assets. And then, of course, for us as a partner, the strength of your ISV ecosystem and how you work with other cutting-edge technologies that are prolific, especially in the federal space. We talked about a couple of them here, Splunk. Rubrik is a big one for us. They've sort of revolutionized the backup space and made it very, very simple through open API calls to allow customers to self-service backups at a very granular level. And one of the really interesting use cases that you guys have worked on with Rubrik, and that is resonating with our client base, is the ransomware defense capability that's inherent in the fact that, as something is, automatically backed up through the Rubrik framework and sent by S3 to Cloudian, if a host were attacked and needed to be shut down and respun in the event of, some kind of ransomware attack, all of that is made possible through a seamless automated framework because of the integration work that Cloudian has done with Rubrik specifically. So the list goes on, but all of this means that, you guys are doing great things in working with technology partners. You're doing great things in listening to the customer base. And by adapting and addressing federal specific requirements, it's a major differentiator.
Absolutely. And what, based on what we just talked about, we are super excited about these opportunities in this federal space, right? And our relationship with ClearShark is an integral part of us doing more. I see this partnership evolving. So, just as the last one of the thoughts, right? Dave, how do you see this partnership evolving, and where do you see us doing a little bit more, right? Do you have any other points that you want to bring up?
Yeah, well, so Paul touched on this, that some of the initial point of entry for us within the federal sector has been around backup, right? Specifically integrating, providing an S3 interface for Rubrik to back up to. We talked about Splunk and how we're eliminating a lot of the cost around storing tremendous amounts of data. But it's very important to note, the innovative release of the all-flash hyperstore is huge, because now we can provide a whole performance tier to numerous different applications. We can also start to look at supporting customers as they transition from, the legacy big box NAS and SAN vendors and start hosting tier 1 data And I think that's an enormous market for us to address in federal. And you guys are building a platform that's going to make it easy for our customers to make that transition and very cost effective.
Super.
Hey, Sanjay, if I could add something to that, ClearShark has been a tremendous customer for us in the federal market. And, so Dave, specifically, I work very closely with him, has introduced us to some of his customers. And, so they very quickly get the S3 native API that we incorporate. And they understand that as AWS expands that API, that we're in position to very quickly analyze that expansion, then incorporate it into our product. So think, our recent expansion into IAM and to SAML and to object lock for immutable storage. Those are all features that AWS has expanded and that we have moved into our product. And then recently, Dave's customer got really excited about this. And then another customer of mine, the healthcare one, started talking to him about our evolution into being compatible with Kubernetes environment. And as we move beyond that and specifically into VMware, a tighter integration with their architecture. So not only are we compatible with Tanzu, their implementation of Kubernetes, but now we start to roll in under the traditional architecture of vSphere and vSAN. Those are all exciting directions. And the more we get involved with, other customers and Dave's customers, the light bulb goes out and they say, wow, this is pretty cool. The way that Cloudian is just keeping abreast of the market and moving along with it.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up very key, interesting points, right? And Dave, thank you very much for understanding, right? We at Cloudian have continuously kept an eye on where the market is moving and have adjusted our products and offerings and our solutions to cater to what the markets and the customers are asking for. Kubernetes is just one example. Our ecosystem has grown. We are now a strategic partner with VMware, not only just for those cloud provider services, but now also bringing Kubernetes into the enterprise or the vSAN, vSphere environments, so that now we can have native enterprise object storage on vSphere. So I think this is an area where Cloudian is doing really, really well. And I think the results are there to see for everybody. I personally am more excited about these opportunities at federal customers, because as I think one of you mentioned this, right? I think federal agencies are the largest generator of data, and we are the de facto platform for data storage. So what else can we ask for, right? And the market is right now ripe for the kind of solutions we bring. So I can keep talking about this. This has been a wonderful experience, right? I want to thank both of you for taking your time, and all our audiences for tuning in, listening, and sharing these insights with us. If you have any other questions, please feel free to drop us a note, or if you want to talk about something, please do, and we will definitely get back to you, right? Let's Dave, thank you, and Paul, thank you. Let's do this again in a short period of time and come back with some interesting anecdotes from our customers. It was a pleasure talking to both of you guys.
Very good. Thanks, Sanjay.